Good morning, everyone. Na asti vidya samam chakshu, na asti satya samam tapah, na asti rag samam dukham, na asti tyag samam sukham. Knowledge is the greatest I, truth the highest penance, attachment the biggest pain, and renunciation the highest happiness. With the motto of healing each other and the society during these tough times, I, Dr. Harneet Kaur, Associate Professor Orthodontics, on behalf of entire Faculty of Dentistry, Jamia Millia Islamia, invite you all for yet another awareness program for the benefit of everyone. We welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Najma Akhtar ma'am, Registrar and Controller of Examination, Dr. Nazim Hussain Al Jafri sir, Finance Officer, Dr. Renu Batra ma'am, our guest speaker for the day, Professor Dr. Ishwar Singh sir, Dean Faculty of Dentistry, Professor Dr. Sanjay Singh sir, Deans and Directors of various faculties and centers of Jamia Millia Islamia, our esteemed faculty members of the university and other colleges of Delhi NCR and all over India, also the participants from Delhi NCR and from other states as well, and our dear students. Welcome you all for today's talk on black fungus or mucormycosis. Earlier rare, but now a serious fungal infection that has been affecting the recovered or recovering COVID-19 patients. Before we commence, as a tradition of Jamia Millia Islamia, let us first seek the blessings from the Almighty. May I invite Dr. Muhammad Sareem, Associate Professor Pathology, for Tilawat-e-Quran and the translation for the same.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum to everybody. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. خلق الإنسان من علق. اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم. علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. صدق الله العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Recite in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging substance. Recite, and your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man that which he knew not. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Salim. To begin with, I invite our leader, a teacher and a motivator who has driven the faculty smoothly all during this pandemic. Our Dean Faculty of Dentistry and the organizing chairperson for the program, Professor Sanjay Singh sir. I invite you, sir, for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Harneet. Very good morning to one and all. Welcome to this lecture, Black Fungus, All You Need to Know. We all are witnessing an unprecedented health emergency of our lifetime for the last 18 months due to COVID-19 pandemic. And there are no signs of it abating in near future. We are still struggling to fight this virus, and yet another enemy in the form of mucormycosis, commonly known as black fungus, is observed in many patients suffering from COVID-19 infection. Black fungus infection used to be rare infection in the past, but it has assumed an alarming proportion in many parts of the country, causing severe morbidity and mortality. There is a lot of fear, apprehension, anxiety, and of course, curiosity in the minds of people regarding this disease. Being aware of these facts, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Madam, thought of having a lecture on this subject so that we all become aware of it and know about this disease, its signs and symptoms, predisposing factors, and treatment modalities. We are happy to have an eminent speaker, Professor Dr. Ishwar Singh, who has very kindly agreed to share his knowledge on the subject. He is Director Professor, Department of ENT, Maulana Azad Medical College, and LNJP Hospital. He is directly involved in managing black fungus cases in LNJP Hospital. I am sure we all are going to have a very fruitful session with him. Without wasting much time, I hand over it to Dr. Harneet. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. From milestones and targets to motivation and success, from failures and setbacks to moving ahead and progress, she has stood by us, yes, each one of us in the university through all these tough times. An academic administrator par excellence and the First Lady Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia, we are honored to have amongst us Professor Najma Akhtar ma'am. I invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor ma'am for her welcome address and request her to kindly introduce our guest speaker for the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Harneet. The Honorable Guest Speaker, Professor Ishwar Singh, former head otorhinolaryngology and head neck surgery, Maulana Azad Medical College and Lok Nayak Hospital, New Delhi. Professor Sanjay Singh, Dean Faculty of Dentistry, Jamia Millia Islamia. My colleagues from Jamia and other universities across the country, dear ladies and gentlemen from India and abroad, a very good morning. Even as a dreadful second wave of coronavirus continues to batter India, a rare but potentially fatal black fungal infection is taking hold in several states across India. Though these fungi are naturally present in the environment, they typically affect people who are on medication for certain health problems, which essentially weakens their immune system. We have heard very dreadful stories about and seen dangerous visuals about this new mysterious disease. It is always better to know about the source, the cause, and symptoms of contracting this infection to avoid rumors and panic, which usually spreads in the absence of scientific know-how about the fungus. Hence, this program is organized by Jamia Millia Islamia. More than 8,000 cases of black fungus have been reported in many states of India. Government and medical experts have also issued various advisories on the health about this disease. Union health ministries have urged the states and union territories to make black fungus a notifiable disease under the Epidemic Disease Act 1897, stating that the infection is leading to prolonged morbidity and mortality among COVID-19 patients. 9 states have already done this: Odisha, Rajasthan, Telangana, Uttarakhand, MP, Bihar, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Gujarat. We have so many questions in our mind to ask about this comparatively new disease. What are the warning signals of this infection? When to see a doctor? Who is at higher risks? What treatment is being used for this? And how to prevent this? To answer all these issues and to tell us more about black fungal infection, we have amongst us Professor Ishwar Singh, Director and Professor, former Head of Department Otorhinolaryngology and Head Neck Surgery, Maulana Azad Medical College and Lok Nayak Hospital. Associated with this reputed institute and hospital since past 25 years, he is currently also the member of Mucormycosis cell constituted in the hospital for management of this disease. Professor Ishwar Singh did his MBBS and MS from Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, Sevagram, Nagpur University, followed by a senior residency from PGIMS, Rohtak, and research associate at PGI, Chandigarh, and Lady Hardinge Medical College, New Delhi. He has done his MBA in Hospital Administration from Faculty of Management, Delhi University. Currently, he is also the president of Delhi Association of Otolaryngology and Head Neck Surgery, apart from being life member of 7 national ENT associations. His credentials reach far, with more than 125 publications in reputed national and international medical journals. 2 book chapters, more than 30 postgraduate doctors, and 28 universities in India as postgraduate examiner. He is also a member of Committee for Technical Evaluation of Indigenous Cochlear Implant by DRDO. Today we welcome Professor Ishwar Singh and thank him for his availability out of his busy schedule and rise in operative cases with this rise of black fungal cases. I welcome him and I hope that we will be satisfied to know whatever questions we had in our mind, and I'm sure Professor Ishwar Singh will be able to answer some of our queries which we have been waiting for him to come. Thank you very much and welcome to Jamia.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sir, before you begin your lecture, I want to, I have a request for the audience. Presently, we are having more than 450 participants out here attending this session. And I request the audience not to ignore, but to be inquisitive and ask your queries. Please write down your questions in the chat box that will be taken up in the question answer session after the lecture. Sir, over to you, Ishwar Singh, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Professor Madam Akhtar, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Jamia Islamia University, Dr. Sanjay Singh, Dr. Nita Kumar, and Dr. Harmit. Thank you so much to invite me to conduct this lecture. I am so honored and thankful to Madam for this. I am so much this for this nice introduction. I don't know whether I deserve this or not. This black fungus, there is a surge in the cases. This disease has been there ever since ages. And we as a ENT surgeon have been treating at least 2 to 3 cases per month in Maulana Azad or in Associated Hospital LNJP. But because of this COVID, this pandemic, we have a sudden increase in the cases of this black fungus, which is we are seeing in newspaper or in media. So much of hype is there. So it's not something new. The only new thing in this is the number of cases are there at this present moment. So that is a thing to ponder over. But as such, the disease is there ever since. So I'll be talking about. I'll be telling, since the target audience are more of them are non-ENT or medical background. So I'll be talking more of in a common man's language so that everybody understands it rather than using technical terms. And those who are from a medical background, please bear with me about this. I think everyone knows about this. So with this, I start my lecture. So first, I'll be talking about a little bit about how this fungus gets into the system in our body, and then what are the signs and symptoms with which these patients manifest. So greeting from Maulana Azad Medical College to everyone. So the topic given to me is black fungus, everything you need to know. So in the beginning, as I said, this black fungus or mucormycosis is there ever since human being came on the earth. So this, in fact, this fungus and bacteria, they came earlier than the human being as the life started, and subsequently, and they are persisting with us. So with this, there are more than 10,000 cases in India at present, and in Maulana Azad we have 41 cases at present admitted. In All India Institute, there are around 160 patients, and in Gangaram there are around 54 patients, as I am told by my colleague. So with so many cases around, there is a spurt, or there is a epidemic of this mucormycosis in this pandemic of COVID-19. So I'll be talking about this. This fungus is ubiquitous. It is present everywhere in the atmosphere, in the soil, in the decaying vegetation, fruits, vegetables, and hot and humid environment of India adds to its growth or its flourishes in that media. Rhizopus and mucor are the most common which affect the human beings. So mucorales, or this mucor, is not a black fungi, as every one of you are thinking about it. Black fungi are different, which has melanin pigment in their wall, and their appearance is black. So melanin is the pigment which gives this coloration or this teal kind of thing or black spots on our body. So that is because of this. So that is present in the black fungus, and this black fungus is a misnomer. The actual name is mucormycosis. That is a technical name, and this black fungus is given because of the end effect, or the and ultimately what is result and what is the seen by everybody. There occurs necrosis of the part which is deprived of the blood supply, so that becomes black in appearance, hence the name black fungus. So as I said, this fungus is present in the environment, and these are the sporangia which are present in the air or in the environment, and these are inhaled. So this, as the air goes inside the nose, then to the airway and ultimately the lungs, these spores, they either get lodged in the nasal cavity, lead to the nasal symptoms, or the sinuses are involved because that is an adjoining structure in the upper airway. So person may have symptoms pertaining to nose and paranasal sinuses, or it may get lodged into the lungs and it will lead to the pulmonary function, or it may be there in the form of GIT or in the form of disseminated. So there are different various systems of which may be affected, leading to different types of manifestation. So the spores, they have come into this, and everyone are inhaling this, and because of the immune system or the defense mechanism of the body, these spores are taken care. Once these spores, these fungal spores, they come into the alveoli or the terminal part of the lung where the exchange of the gases occur, these neutrophils or the phagocytes which come and attack, and they destroy these spore which get into our system, which are trying to get in or trying to sneak into the body, just like we have infiltrators across the borders in our country. So our defense mechanism, defense forces, they take care of. And so it's a fight between the defense and the invaders. So it is happening in everybody, and the defense is better, so these spores are taken care. But as the fight goes on, or the load is more than the system gives in, and these fungus spores, they start proliferating, and this fungus has a affinity, or it has a predilection to attack into the blood vessels, and it will lead to the thrombosis, which lead to the occlusion of blood vessel, and it creates a hypoxic condition, and in which this fungus thrives. So it creates its own environment in the body, and subsequently it may spread. So wherever it lodges, it may get into the blood circulation, and it may disseminate all over the body, and leading to various manifestation of the fungus. So the factors which help into the growth of the bacteria or this fungus is hyperglycemia. Those candidates or the patients who are diabetic or whom the blood sugar level is high, that is known as ketoacidosis, or now this COVID session is on or pandemic is going on, in which we are giving steroids as a primary treatment. So this steroids is a double-edged sword, and if it is judiciously used, it will help the mankind, and if it is unjudiciously used, it will lead to the subsequent problems, and that I'll be enumerating. So the hyperglycemia is one condition, followed by hypoxia, and as I said, this has a every invasion into the vessels lead to thrombosis or occlusion of the blood vessel that will cut off the blood supply to the part which is distal to that blood supply, and subsequently it will be degenerated or undergo necrosis, and it will subsequently die off and it will appear as black. When this phenomena occurs, there is breakdown of these blood vessels which are present in the these RBCs are present in the vessel or in the artery, and there is occurs release of iron, hemoglobin, and this iron acts as a manure, or it adds or facilitates the growth of fungus, and the fungus will grow at a faster rate. And above that, persons who have reduced immunity, your diabetes reduces the immunity, or this COVID infection which is going on, that reduces the number of white blood corpuscles, or the neutropenia occurs in technical terms. So the defense becomes weaker, and hence the fungus takes over. The predisposing factors, as I said, prolonged neutropenia. Because of this COVID, there is a decrease in that total count of the blood corpuscles, or WBC, or those who have bone marrow depression. Those patients who have undergone stem cell transplant for leukemia or from other blood dysplasia are put onto steroids that will again reduce the immunity. Or patients who have undergone organ transplant, especially now kidney transplant is quite common, and even liver is also there. So these patients are put onto steroids long term so as to prevent the rejection of the graft. Other conditions like nephrotic syndrome, rheumatoid arthritis, they are autoimmune disease, and these are prevented or treated with the use of steroids. Patient may have inherited or acquired, that is congenital or acquired immunity, and again the defense goes down, and especially a common condition, HIV, that is sexually transmitted, or it can be because of the blood transfusion also, or other modes of transmission are there that reduces the immunity of the person, and this opportunistic infection which are there in the body, or these commensals are there, so they take over, and all bacteria or fungus which is there in the environment, that also comes into the system, and the defense is weak, that leads to this mucormycosis. The next is diabetes and ketoacidosis. You will be surprised that there are 77 million people of diabetes which are there in India, and this figure is going to touch 101 million by 2030. So India is, as we all know, capital of diabetes mellitus. Those patients who are undergoing chemotherapy for this cancer, so they are also more prone for fungal infection. Why there is a surge in mucormycosis now at present? Because of this COVID-19 pandemic, it itself, when the virus or viremia is there, it affects the inlets of Langerhans in the pancreas, so the insulin secretion decreases, and that adds to the either the diabetes which is already there, or it precipitates in a diabetic, or in a borderline type, it becomes frank diabetic, or even in the normal person who are non-diabetic, because of the infection of the pancreas leads to diabetes. And there is difference and decreased WBC, that is leukopenia is there, so that leads to again or adds fuel to the fire, and or defense or immune compromise occurs. Immunosuppressive drugs are given to take care of the COVID or this coronavirus, and that is steroid. The steroids are glucogenic, again adds to the increase in the blood sugar. So the monitor the blood sugar during this treatment, that becomes a paramount thing to look at. These mucor, they are independent and this is depends on the immunity of the person, how is the health of the person, and the health depends on the good nutrition. So immunity is dependent on health, health is dependent on good nutrition. So these all, this becomes a vicious circle. Person is weak, he is not taking properly, his immunity is down, the opportunity infection which are present in the environment will get a foothold in the system of human body and lead to the various manifestations. So if there is a higher level of blood sugar, immunosuppressive drugs are given. So it is an invitation for the opportunistic infection like mucormycosis to get in. So during this pandemic, because of these factors, there is a surge. Otherwise, mucormycosis is not unknown disease to at least ENT fraternity. We do come across this proptosis or this black discoloration or black or nasal obstruction or the swelling on the cheek or ulcer on the palate. These are some of the manifestations which are nothing new for the ENT person. So mucor can present as rhino-orbitocerebral. That is the commonest. I'll be showing you the photographs. As the air passes from the nose or paranasal sinuses down to the lungs or to the trachea, then in the chest, the person may have cough, fever, chest pain, or blood stain sputum, or there may be pleural effusion, that is collection of fluid in the thorax. Patient may take some infected food, that will lead to the gastrointestinal or abdominal mucormycosis. Person may present with vomiting, nausea, pain in abdomen, loss of appetite, weight loss because the food is not absorbed, and even there may be GI gastrointestinal bleed. Patient may have cutaneous manifestation like in burn or trauma. There will be the fungus, that is an opportunistic infection will set in, and you keep on doing dressing, the wound is not healing, there will be some greenish discoloration, and that fungus may set in. So one has to be very vigilant or cautious to see that the wound is always covered. In case of disseminated or it goes all over through the body, there are non-specific presentation in the form of fever, abdominal pain, peritonitis, kidney symptoms may set in, and this mucor has a motility in the form of in the rate of 25 to 62, depending on which system is involved. Once the intracranial extension occurs through the orbit, then the mortality goes up. For those especially non-medical background, I'll be talking about this nose and sinuses. You can see these are the black things. These are the sinuses which are there in the upper jaw. This is the orbit, and this medial to this is called ethmoid sinuses. In an X-ray, you can see these are the orbit. These are the frontal sinus. This is maxillary sinus, and in an open mouth at the center there is a ethmoid and this thing, sphenoid sinus, that is in the center of the skull. And these structures overlap in X-ray, but in a case of CT, you can see just like a loaf of bread is cut into many slices. So these are just like slices of the skull. You can see this is axial, and this is the orbit or the eyeball is there, and this is just separated by a thin papery bone from the medial side. So any infection in the nose will certainly get into the orbit. So first place where the infection gets into is in the ethmoids or a maxillary sinuses, and then it will, if the treatment is not sought by the patient, or if he is not bothered, because these commonly present with common symptoms like cold, nasal obstruction, and these are nothing new for the patient, but he doesn't know there is a fire in the this thing, nasal cavity. So the next system which is commonly involved is ocular or the orbit, and again this you can see it is communicating through the to the intracranial cavity or to the brain through these various foramens through which these various nerves which regulate the movement of the eye are connected. So with this, I come to my topic, that is rhino-orbital cerebellar mucormycosis, which is the commonest site which is involved, and it has been divided into 3 stages. When only nose and paranasal sinuses are involved, there because that is the portal of entry or for the airway to through which the air passes, and patient may present and it has a good prognosis. In stage 2, when our second sister specialty, that eye next door to the ENT, is involved, then again the prognosis is good, provided a patient comes early. But if the patient delays it or goes from one person to another for doctor shopping, then he may end up with the loss of the organ, that is, he will lose the sight or the vision, and patient may have to sacrifice his eyeball. In stage 3, when the brain is involved, because after the eye, the next structure which is next to the orbit is what you call brain, and once the infection goes intracranially, then only the mortality goes up. The early symptoms with which the patient will present are pertaining to the nose and sinuses. Patient may have headache, he may have nasal obstruction, and the one persists in spite of medication, and it is severe and not responding to medical line of treatment, and pain continues. There may be nasal crust, which may be black in appearance, or there may be discharge, which can be brownish or blood stained, or it can be frank blood, black. So these are the early warning sign, and patient should be made aware of that so that he reports to the doctor. The signs that a person looks into the patient, what are the things which he is going to see? If it in the nasal cavity, there may be blackening or dryness of the turbinates, there may be blackening of the septum, the blackening of the nasal mucosa, or patient may have reduced sensation of the cheek, or especially the ala of the nose. So this nose and lower or upper jaw below the eyeball is the area which is most commonly affected, and there may be tenderness or induration, or if the patient comes late, then there will be blackening of the skin over the cheek, and that's why this fungus is called black fungus, though it's a misnomer because of the very appearance, but the underlying pathology is mucormycosis. In the oral cavity, we may say ulceration of the palate, and in the beginning there will be ischemia, so there will be decreased blood supply. The normal pink mucosa will appear as white, so the blood supply is decreased, and subsequently there will be ulcer, and it will be at the last it will be black in appearance. So this is I operated on Saturday this this thing endoscopic. So this is how we take the patient looks into the monitor, and this is the interior of the nasal cavity. You can see there are brownish or blackish things, and this pinkish is the normal appearance which is there. But because of this fungus, so the color changes, and as you go closer, these are crusts which can be seen in the nasal cavity, and these are thick, which are adherent to the, because this is part of the mucosa which has been deprived of the blood supply, and it is quite adherent, it has to be removed. So the next symptoms, there will be loss of sensation, as I said earlier, discoloration of the skin, there may be loosening of the teeth, so patient may present to our dental colleagues, or there may be ulceration in the palate or in the pain in the jaw, and pain in the teeth is a common thing, and they say it patient feels it's pertaining to caries of the teeth, and he may ignore it, he may do self-medication, and he may delay a visit to our dental colleague. So by the time patient goes there, it has already spread. So the patient should also be aware. That's why this lecture, I am thankful to Jamia people. They have organized a public kind of this thing, and you being a educated elite class, so you can spread this message to your colleagues, to your family, that you have to seek the attention of doctor as early as possible, especially those who are post-COVID in a recovery phase, because those COVID patients, they have been treated with the steroid, and this fungus is getting an infection now, and in COVID cases, this has become a thing of alarm, and our media has hid. You can see this is patient which is there in my ward, and you can see the palate is necrosed, it is pale in appearance. You can see such a dirty looking thing. This tongue is also coated, and you can see the allow the nose, it is getting black. So patient must have thought of this disease some simple thing, but now patient is in altered sensorium and she has come at a late stage. You can see only palate which is involved. This is a brownish in appearance, and you can see the margins, the mucosa is pink, but here you can see on the necrotic tissue, and this tissue is seen which is coming out. So patient may present, and such a patient may have change in voice or nasal twang. These are the symptoms with which the person will present. Moderately advanced, when our eyeballs are involved or orbital infection has set in, then patient may have symptoms pertaining to eye, and it will be in the form of swelling, or there may be redness, or patient may have double vision. Patient may have diminution of vision, pain which is deep seated, or there may be drooping of eyelid, so person is not able to open the eye, or in advanced stage patient, when the intracranial involvement has occurred, the eyeball may not move because all the control of eyeball is through the nerves, and which are coming from the rear side or back side of the orbit. So this is a one side which is called in technical terms cavernous sinuses, through which the second to sixth cranial nerve pass, and they regulate the movement of the eyeball. And if that is involved, then patient will have ophthalmoplegia. So there is no movement of the eyeball, and if the middle cerebral artery, the vessel which is supplying to the brain intracranial, that gets thrombosed, patient may have stroke like hemiplegia, or his sensorium may be altered, or he may be even unconscious. So the signs are edema, which can be unilateral or bilateral. They can be diminished vision or loss of vision. Person may have even sudden loss of vision, or the drooping of eye, or there may be protrusion of the eyeball if the eyeball is pushed outside, or he may see two things at a time, or there may be redness or swelling of the cornea conjunctiva, or this loss of movement, that is ophthalmoplegia. Cornea may be hazy. So you can see this is patient who has slight proptosis, swelling, and you can see congestion over the eyeball, and this has ptosis or drooping of the eyeball. There is a swelling, you can see fullness, there is some blood stain discharge in the nasal cavity which is there, and so this cheek and eyeball and all these things, it must have started in the nasal cavity, as it is obvious from the nasal discharge, and patient must have sought treatment from local doctors which are not aware of this condition, and hence the delay. So you can see a bilateral involvement, this swelling of the upper lid, this shining skin, this is involved, and you can see the other side also involved, and you can see there is a haziness, congestion, redness, or the eyeball. So this is a bilateral up to here, the skin is involved, and this is again advanced presentation. So there can be early presentation, only one, still the patient is able to open the eye, and only this swelling is there. And so she is a COVID patient who has come with this orbital cellulitis now. And this is the common facial presentation of patient, and these patients are usually diabetic, and we do get 2 or 3 cases in a month regularly in our hospital from either from the adjoining states or even from Delhi itself. When the patient comes late, this may be the presentation. You can see the eyeball is involved, the pus is coming out, whole one side of the face, even the oral cavity, and he was a diabetic. Either these are patients neglected at home, or they are destitute, or in old age home, God knows. But why this Indian population or Indian patients, they have such a high threshold for the tolerance. You can see this patient, all the sides, pus is trickling out, and he was brought into our ward. And after a course of in this medical treatment, you can see the result. The swelling has come down because face has a good supply, so the vessels were not involved. And you can see the eye symptoms are still present. And this patient was sent to the another hospital because suddenly our hospital was declared COVID, and all the OPD, OT, everything was shut down. And then I had to request one of my colleagues to take over this patient. This is what is called black fungus, and this is the result of the late presentation. You can see the patient is having black appearance over the cheek, eye, and the middle side of the eyeball, and you can see this as an intracranial extension. So it is going, this is the brain which is there, so the infection has set in and it has crossed the boundary of the orbit, and it has, this is the MRI which is there, and you can see this is in the middle side of the nasal cavity, and then going, this is the orbit which is involved, and this is the apex of the orbit which is involved. So these are the cases which come at a late stage. The patient should be aware that earlier the better. So diagnosis. So nasal endoscopy should be done to see for the black crust or necrosis of the mucosa or the tabinates, and immediately swab should be sent, or this crust which can be collected from the nasal cavity, and this KH this thing microscopy and under microscope in KH mount is done, and this is positive in almost 50% of the cases. The this micro swab can be cultured, and it takes some time, and this mucormycosis has a very fulminant course. It is even faster than your malignancy. Malignancy gives you time. You can go and Tata, you can go to different hospital to seek opinion. But this mucormycosis, it has a vessel invasion. So patient may have swelling. He may have good vision, but after 2 days, the vision will be lost. So it has a faster course. So you have to be very prompt in taking action and go to a proper or a qualified or one who knows the subject to such a doctor. Don't go and waste your time to a non-specialist doctor. Ultimately, this mucormycosis, the first line of treatment is surgery. Whatever the focus of infection, that has to be removed either surgically, and then the patient is to be put on medical treatment in the form of amphotericin B. Again, it has to be given in a hospital setting, and it has to be given at least for 2 to 3 weeks, or it may be given for longer, for 6 weeks. And this is a toxic drug, so it has to be monitored. So next is culture. It takes 3 days. Biopsy is the gold standard, and it takes another 4-5 days to establish the process the slides and see, do the give the final diagnosis. And CT scan, radiology imaging gives you the extent, and there are certain features which are you have to take into your clinical this thing appearance in account, and then the CT will or MRI. MRI is indicated when there is a soft tissue or involvement like eyeball or infratemporal fossa, that is behind the jaw, or intracranial extension. CT is the first. There may be certain supple signs which may be there, and it has to be discussed with the radiologist, and so that gives you or decides the extent or how much of the disease area part of the body is invaded by this dreaded mucormycosis. So this is, you can see on the left side, this is the tabinate which has undergone necrosis. This is normal mucosa, this is septum, and this mucor, it is a aseptate fungus which is wider ribbon-like, whereas Aspergillus, they are septate and the angulation is acute, but in case of mucormycosis, the angulation is 90 degree, and this is Giemsa stain. So this is 90 degree. You can see the fungus, it is budding out. So this is at a right angle, and this is the histopathology. And that is the final gold standard for the diagnosis or establishment, if you can see the fungus in the tissue. These are radiological features. See the gadolinium enhanced or contrast media MRI, that is the that should be considered if a facility and patient can afford. So you can see this the maxilla, the eyeball or the nasal cavity is invaded. And in CT, you can see this is sinusitis. So you have to take the clinical picture into view, and then this CT will, plain CT, though it can still be used, but early signs are yet to be picked up. So this can be used as to see the extent of the disease. The role of surgery. Surgery is the first treatment, first line of treatment. It has to be earliest. As soon as you get your diagnosis, you see the black crust, you can get your microbiology, or you can see have a histopathology. But as soon as your diagnosis established, at the earliest, go for the surgical debridement and debride the tissue till you get a flesh bleeding in the nasal cavity, middle wall of the or lateral wall of the nose can be removed, the mucosa can be removed, the septum can be removed. So you have to remove the all dead necrotic tissue, because that dead necrotic tissue doesn't have blood supply, and the drug amphotericin doesn't go there. So this virus is very smart. It creates hypoxia, occlude the blood vessels so that the drug cannot come there. This surgical debridement will reduce the burden of that necrotic tissue, so there will be better efficacy or better improved this thing infusion of the drug, and this helps in the this facilitates the antifungal drug penetration. Then this surgery can be endoscopic, depending on the extent of the disease. If it is limited to the sinuses or in the nasal cavity, nowadays this endoscopic surgery has revolutionized the management of the sinusitis or the fungal infection. So you can remove the whole of the middle wall of the maxilla, you can remove the septum, you can remove the infratemporal structures or the infection in the infratemporal fossa or interior of the or anterior wall of the or even up to the skull base. So the bone which is necrosed, dead, and that can be removed endoscopic. If the anterolateral part of the cheek is involved, then open approach is better. And if the orbit is involved, it is non-functional, then patient may have to give a consent, and orbital exentration, that is removal of the eyeball, can be done. So you can see in this patient, this palate which was necrosed has been removed. So these are the bone pieces which are removed. You can see a big opening in the palate. So that was the part which was invaded by fungus. Ocular management, that is in the form of orbital exentration. You can see this is the apex of the orbit, this is the optic nerve, and this is ethmoid. So this can be removed endoscopically. And this eyeball, once it becomes non-functional, it is not going to regain its function. There occurs a retinal this blood vessel involvement, and it has to be removed, that non-functional process. Lipid formulation of amphotericin B is given, that is given in the dose of 3 to 5 milligram per kg weight per day. And this lipid complex, lipid form has a better penetration, and it is less nephrotoxic as compared to the simple or plain amphotericin B. So in a total dose of 5 to 7 grams is given, and after surgery you have to give at least 2 to 3 weeks, and it may be extended up to 6 weeks depending on the patient response. And patient may be subjected if there is a recurrence or residual. So patient may undergo after the primary surgery for the recurrence, or he may have 2-3 sittings, because the dead necrotic tissue or gut which is there, and it's very foul smelling, it has to be removed so as to have a early recovery. The treatment principles: take control of the comorbidity, control the blood sugar, and especially in this COVID scenario, the COVID treatment to minimize the immunocompromise, as the steroids are given, so they are glucogenic or they precipitate the steroid and diabetes. So evaluate such patients with the mucormycosis, because mucormycosis may coexist with the COVID, and they act synergistically. This COVID reduces the immunity, so that facilitates the growth of mucormycosis. COVID affects the pancreas, increases the blood sugar level, again in favor of mucor, and then the steroids which are given, they are in favor of COVID, and helps in the growth of mucormycosis. So confirm the diagnosis either in the form of biopsy or KH smear, and area which is involved has to be removed. Radiology will give you the extent to which the disease has spread into the orbit or into the sinuses, and then antifungal treatment has to be started, and in the form of amphotericin B. And this posaconazole, this is a newer drug and which is quite costly, and then do the earliest surgical debridement. The medical treatment I said, this is in the form of amphotericin B, lipid form. It can be given up to 10 milligrams in case of intracranial extension. So when the CNS or brain is involved, then the dose has to be increased, and you have to see a detailed history, see the renal function or liver function of the patient are to be done so as to prevent the this thing nephrotoxicity. And in case the patient has, then he has to be given some alternative in the form of posaconazole, but that is a quite costly thing, and patient has to be monitored. So when we are giving such a nephrotoxic drug, so you have to do blood urea, serum creatinine baseline, and then this electrolyte, sodium, potassium, and magnesium level has to be estimated, because there occurs hypokalemia and hypomagnesemia. So these have to be monitored, or this electrolyte imbalance may occur. So the plain one is nephrotoxic, but in a resource constraint, it may be given. This is cheaper version. It is just 350 or up to 500 nowadays. That is there, whereas liposomal is 800 per 100 milligram, and you have to give 5 milligram per kg weight in a 60 ml 60 kg person. 300 to is given. So you have to give 6 vials, and that will almost 48,000. So it is beyond the reach of a common man. So there can be acute reaction to this plain simple amphotericin B in the form of nausea, chills, or they may occur rigor, that shivering which occurs during the IV infusion, and it may have to be discontinued, and it is given in a dextrose line. So you have to maintain the sugar, or you may have to give insulin. Patient may have diarrhea, headache, and because it is given through the IV, there may be thrombophlebitis, that is inflammation of the veins, and the kidney is affected, that is nephrotoxic, and you have to monitor the electrolyte balance. The other drugs, as I said, posaconazole, it is 8,000 milligram per 100 milligram and 300 milligram BID for day 1, that is loading dose, and then 300 milligram daily in the maintenance dose. There are other isoconazole, that is this posaconazole is almost 8,000 rupees, whereas isoconazole, it is an IV drug, and it is 8,000 for 100 milligram. So this will be 16,000 per day, again quite costly even for a middle class or upper middle class family. So who are the patients who are vulnerable to this mucormycosis infection? Those who are in hospital, because this in COVID scenario, patients are put on ventilators and they stay for a longer period. So they are the one who are potential candidate to have this infection. So critically ill patients who are subjected to emergency procedures, even putting a central vein, catheterization, endoscopic, like bronchoscopy, they are the one, because this fungus may be there. So one has to take a quite aseptic precaution to carry out these invasive procedures in patient. Patient, as I said, mechanical ventilation. In this, in corona, this was such a huge demand for ventilating bed, and people were not getting, people were desperate, they were running here and there. So these patients, they are prone for this mucormycosis. Or poor nursing ratios, you have to have good patient care during this, because patient can't help himself, or this fungus is quite rampant in ICU, so there has to be fumigation of the, and you have to do cleaning and sanitization of the ICUs. And whenever there is a breach in the sepsis, the opportunistic infection will set in, it will come. And nosocomial infection may occur. The patient is admitted for some other infection, but he will acquire this hospital acquired infection, that is quite common, and it may be even after surgery. And this broad spectrum antibiotic which are given, so your normal commensals or the effective infective pathogens are taken care, but the fungal which is an opportunistic one that will come in, and patient may have fever, and they may be lose motion because of this. So these normal commensals are very important, and they have a competition with the pathogens and have a reduce the morbidity. So this self-medication is a dangerous thing which should be not done by routinely. The antibiotic or any treatment should be under the supervision of a qualified doctor who are vulnerable at home. Unhygienic conditions nowadays, because the lockdown, the help is not there, so one has to do everything himself. The old bread may be there, fermented food may be there, or milk or organic garbage. They are all sorts of your fungus at home. Your fridge, if it is not monthly or 2 monthly clean, you have to clean the AC filters. Oxygen concentrators, which are in quite widely used nowadays, they may be used, so whenever they may be even available on rent. So one has to do sanitization thoroughly, clean the things before you use it. Mask should not be used for more than 2 days. Have a new mask, or you have set of cloth masks, and they should be washed regularly. And don't use a mask for more than 2 days in continuation. Steam inhalation, that is a point of debate. Some people say it helps, others say the fungus or the spores which are present in the nose may be going down, but it depends on which stage of the infection you take this steam inhalation. So I'll say you take as per your convenience. Antibiotics uses, I said earlier, don't do self-medication. You have to take it under the supervision of a experienced person, or that is doctor. Oxygen humidifiers that are blamed for this spurt in the cases, because the water which is used for humidification is not changed daily, or it may not be a normal missing water, or it may be tap water, which may again have some fungus. So it may not be used for because of this so much of pressure of the patients. And the cylinders, they may be again a focus source of fungal infection. If you use proper authorized thing, and sometimes because of the lack of manpower, the patient's attendant may be used to operate this thing, so that can also be a source. And plants which are there indoors again contribute to a source of fungal infection to the, though they look good, but in a patient who is on an organ transplant, or who is using immunosuppressive drug, or who has some underlying pathology, so in those houses, please keep your indoor plant not inside, because they may be a source of infection. Now coming to prevention of mucormycosis, there is so much of hallagalla going on in the newspaper. Can it be prevented? Yes, it can be. And now we are looking for vaccine for COVID, but there is no vaccine for mucormycosis. We have this vaccine for DPT, all those diphtheria, pertussis is used, tetanus and measles, mumps, rubella, all those vaccines are there, but there is no vaccine for mucormycosis. It's not contagious. You can't get it from one person to other. So only those who are vulnerable, whose defense or immunity is reduced, they are the one or prone to get this infection. So you have to have a good self-cleaning, self-care. That is the best way to prevent. Weakened immunity is an important step. So keep yourself in the indoors. So don't go out, don't do any gardening while you are in an immunocompromised status. So wearing a mask is an important step, and it will reduce your COVID. It will take care of your COVID as well as your mucormycosis. So don't be careless in using masks. Maintain a good safe distance. Social distancing is again important, and taking extra precautions during summer and autumn when there is change of temperature, that is humid atmosphere, which increases the load of fungus. So fungus is more common in hot, humid, as I said earlier. So that is the way you can prevent this mucormycosis being acquired by you. So there are certain patients' responsibility. Give a full detailed history or don't hide anything from your doctor about pertaining to diabetes. Measure your blood sugar if you are diabetic. Have a regular checkup. Watch for these early signs of mucor, blood stain, or nasal obstruction, blood crust, which I enumerated. I think many of you may now must have understood what are the early signs. Maintain basic good hygiene. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Follow the advice. What happens when the things improve? Patients, they become casual and then they lower their guard. So don't do any self-medication in the form of steroids or antibiotics, and as report to the concerned specialist as soon as you have any abnormal symptom pertaining to any eye, nose, or even chest. So don't ignore the medical advice. These are the don'ts by which you will have some safety guard. In summary, I'll say have a good control of the blood sugar level, rational and judicious use of corticosteroids, because steroids, I said, is a double-edged weapon. It can it can save you from corona, but it can predispose you for a mucormycosis. So it should be judicious. Don't start at the early stage. When are required, when the lungs are infected, only that stage one should involve or use steroids. Proper indication and doses and how long. Don't start in a high dose. The severity is not taken care by high dose. No antifungal prophylaxis is recommended. Discharge with the advice. Follow the advice strictly, and crucial stage at which the infection sets in is about 18 days. So it is the 2nd to 6th week where patient of COVID may have mucormycosis, and have a nasal endoscopic examination of the cases at the post-COVID. So that will help in picking up the early things, because nose and paranasal sinuses are the first site which are involved. So key to success, early diagnosis. As the diagnosis is established, do away or reduce the bulk of this dead necrotic tissue. That is the focus. So remove this till you get a good bleeding. Bleeding can be controlled by PET. And once they are bleeding, so up to that blood level, the this antifungal drug, that is amphotericin, will reach, and whatever the small things which are, or microscopic things which are left behind, can be taken by this antifungal drugs in the form of medical treatment. With this, I finish my lecture and I welcome if there is any question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Harneet. So it was an overwhelming response by more than 450 participants who joined us today. So I'll take as many questions as possible. First, I will invite our Honorable VC Ma'am, Professor Najma Akhtar, if you want to make any comments or any questions.
Thank you. I have been listening very carefully, and being a non-medical person, I must congratulate Dr. Ishwar Singh that he has been, the way he has explained, many people like me and others who are not from the medical background are able to understand it. It is definitely telling us when and how to contact the doctor, and do not waste time in trying to diagnose it yourself or use medicine without taking the doctor's advice. I have no more questions. I'll leave it to the others, the participants who are there, to ask it. Maybe you can take a number of questions and then the doctor may reply to them. That's
Thank
up
you,
to
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
So there are a couple of questions in the chat box. So first question is by Dr. Aruna Nautiyal. She wanted to know is nose the only mode of entry of this fungus into the body?
No. Even the skin is known, post burn cases, those who are where the skin is exposed, where there is a raw surface. So skin, this burn patient, they are known to acquire this thing, fungal infection. So for respiratory, paranasal sinus, sinoorbital, this nose is the commonest focus because that is the only portal of entry of the air and the spores are present. But they are present in the environment. So if a person has a burn, post-burn patient, why they are covered or this dressing is done so as to cover the wound. Even those who have some injury in the hand or in the leg and they want to do gardening, one has to do a very tight, neat and clean dressing. Only then he can take a chance to do this thing. So skin is also through that he can have a, even after injection, if it is the sterility is not there, if it is earlier people used to boil, so post injection they used to be abscess. So that is not the only this thing portal of entry, but commonest focus is to or entry point is nose.
So the second question by Anmol Gupta. Since fungus isn't actually black, then what makes it called so? You mentioned that it is a misnomer. Probably
It's a misnomer because what we see outside, I showed you one or two photographs. So the skin undergoes necrosis or the part is deprived of the blood supply. And after earlier, once the blood supply is decreased, it will be pale in appearance and it will be looking for the blood supply. If it is not there, the thrombosis occurs. So the blood supply is cut off. So ultimately it will undergo necrosis and that gives a black appearance. So the name. But the fungus itself is not black. That I said in the very first slide. That melanin contained fungus are different. So this is just because it's a misnomer which is stuck up. Because the ultimate result, what we see outside or even in the nose, that is black in appearance. So the name is black fungus.
Does it affect children and young adults? Some have said that they have seen cases in young patients.
Even the say ultimately it is a balance between the immunity and the defense of the host versus the invader. If your defense is good, even a normal person, their lungs are getting this load of this fungus, they are taken care by phagocytes. So younger children who are undergoing steroids for leukemia or for some this organ transplant or for autoimmune disease, so they are the one. So steroid predisposed to reduce immunity, so or some renal transplant. Even in younger patients, they are juvenile type of diabetics. They do get fungal infection. So we had a juvenile diabetic. He had even thiasis bulbi, the mucormycosis was there on the face, eyeball, everywhere, and I did a debridement, and patient was sent home, and then ultimately succumbed to the disease. So it occurs in younger children or younger patients also.
So another question is that what is the relation between COVID and diabetes? Because some patients who were not diabetic pre-COVID have been diagnosed as diabetic during the COVID treatment or later.
Yes.
I told is one of the predisposing factors is or the treatment modality which is used is steroid. So it is the timing and the dose and the stage at which is used and how long it has been used. So those who are in a pre-diabetic condition and this steroid has been used, so they become frank one. And I said this virus is known to affect the source of insulin that is in the pancreas. So the body indigenous, so this thing insulin is cut off, and on the top of it you are using steroids. So the blood sugar is bound to increase, and that will again predispose to. So this corona creates a conducive condition for the growth of fungus, this mucormycosis. And all those contributory factors like this commercial or industrial grade oxygen which is used for the medical purpose. So the impurities are there in the industrial one, and this 98-99% purification is there in the medical oxygen. And So those are the contributor factors. You can't say with authority that these are the factors. So these are the probable hypotheses. One has to look into this because corona is a new disease. It has come earlier. If you remember last year, every third day the protocol or the treatment policy were changing. So we are new to this now. This year at least we are better off. But again, the steroids that has lead to the havoc. To totally blame the steroids is not again a thing. Like nephrotic syndrome or rheumatoid arthritis or any other autoimmune disease we had been using. So the dose may be less just to control, take care of this. Here, unjudicious self-medication, every Tom and Dick Harry is using steroids. I'll tell you a story. When I was a postgraduate student, I had come to Delhi and I met my cousin who is practicing in at the backside of Ashok Vihar. And when I was with him in his clinic, one patient came from with fever, and the treatment he gave was steroid. I told him, why have you prescribed steroid to this patient? कहता आपको प्रैक्टिस के टोटके नहीं पता, ये पेशेंट दूसरे क्लिनिक से टूट के आया है. अगर मैं इसको एक बार नॉर्मल नहीं करूं, ये सोचेगा कि डॉक्टर की दवाई लग गई है, तो ये मेरे से भी भाग जाएगा. Just to retain. So most of the GPs, they are doing a steroid practice. So this is unjudicious use of steroid, which may be adding fuel to the fire. Am I clear?
Yes, sir. Dr. Gagandeep Kaur wants to know that you mentioned that there are some certain symptoms in the jaw and teeth, and it may be confused with dental caries. So how do we differentiate between these painful jaw from mucormycosis, and what would be the choice of investigation in these early cases?
Say early cases, even sinusitis kind of presentation be there, because the area where the is involved. Doctor, you said she's a dental surgeon, from dentistry side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the site which is involved is the corner site which is involved is the inferior turbinate or middle turbinate at the back side, and this infratemporal fossa. So they are in close vicinity, and this maxillary now it traverses through the infratemporal fossa, comes to through infraorbital foramen. So that is the site, and when we do surgery, we do get involvement of infratemporal fossa, even pterygoid area, and this pterygoid plate. So that is the site where the infection sets in, and bone, dead necrotic bone removed on the anterior surface of the sphenoid, or in that area, even the rostrum of sphenoid, all those are drilled out to have a good exposure and remove the dead necrotic tissue. So that is the site where earlier involvement occurs, and that may be the cause where pain because of this infraorbital now or maxillary now gets involved. So you have to see if the caries is there. Obviously, my dental friends will be in a better position to diagnose, but that is the site where the nerves are involved, and that may radiate to the upper jaw.
Thank you, sir. There are a couple of questions related to use of oxygen. This time, many patients were given commercial oxygen or industrial oxygen at home, probably in unhygienic conditions. And what is your take on what kind of impact it would have? And then the availability of water at home. Sometimes you may not have sterile water. Is it RO water can be used or distilled water not available? What is your take on this?
The best way to sterilize is use the boiled water. Boil it, cool it, and that is the way. Short steam and this thing sterilization is the best way. If you don't have RO or you don't have hand-on and you have only normal water, so boil, keep it covered. That is becomes your sterile water. Oxygenation, yes, it's a point of debate. I have heard so many webinar on this. If that is the focus or the commercial oxygen is the source, then all the patients who require this oxygenation or oxygen supplementation should have mucor, but all do not get. So those who are diabetic, on the top of a steroid and leukopenia because of corona, all these are contributory factors. We have to look into this. A good epidemiological survey or in a epidemics, the source has to be looked into from where it has come. So this is a point. There are views in favor of it. There are point against as a source of. So let's see over a period of time, the literature will come up and we can have answer to this question.
There is a concern in the common community that if a person who is immunosuppressed or like, for example, a diabetic patient comes in contact with an infected person with mucormycosis, can he get the disease because he's already vulnerable? So
So
probably
no, it's not contagious. I said so. One has to keep a good distance, and if the person who is immunocompromised, say you must have seen patients who are on chemotherapy, they are advised to use masks. Those who are organ transplants. So and now we used to feel, and he used to be feel outcast kind of thing. He's using now by every one of us, even a normal or a predisposed, everyone has to prevent and say this mask or self social distance. These are the keystones or the cornerstone of this treatment. So if you prevent the entry of pathogen, if your defense is not good, so you keep a watchman, and that is in the form of mask. And this mask has to be not to use over continuously, then it itself may be focus of infection. So it has to be, as we can't put on the same shirt continuously, we change it next day. So why can't we use a mask for only 4 days? Have a set of say 8-10 mask clothes masks, and they can be washed, and you keep them in a cycle. So by the time you have 5, this thing every 5th day it will be sterile after washing.
Thank you, sir. We have been decontaminating our surfaces at home as at workplace with 1% sodium hypochlorite. So what is your suggestion for decontamination to prevent fungus spread? Is there any role, or can we do something about it?
Yeah, you have to clean your filters, you have to clean your fridge. Cleanliness, self cleanliness. So cleanliness is next to godliness. So in a healthy environment, good nutrition, in a proper this thing, don't do dusty, go out dusty environment, cover yourself. That is a good thing to prevent. So person has to take care of himself.
So one question is coming from our dental surgeon, Dr. Muhammad Fazil, and he wants to know, since culture and histopath takes time, so is the nasal endoscopy and clinical features would be diagnostic?
Yes, if a person is diabetic and this clinical setting is such, then there cannot be a second diagnosis. One can start with the presumption, and even if you take a swab, it may not come positive. So one has to take the patient in a total clinical, radiological, and your micro. These are supportive things. So you have to have your judgment. If patient is diabetic, he is post-COVID, he has a black crust, and he is hyperglycemic, then person has to take a call. It has to be mucormycosis, nothing else.
Another question comes from our student, intern in our college. She wants to know, what is the time span between the entry of fungus in the body and appearance of symptoms? Like we
in case of COVID, it has been seen that after the treatment, when the patient is discharged, so it is between 2nd and 3rd week. Or as 18, I was listening to a webinar from PGI Chandigarh. They have seen that it is the 2nd week, that is around 18th day, that is the time when one should be cautious. And in fact, Dr. Naresh Panda, professor and head, I was with him during my full job time. He's a friend of mine. He said, and he suggested that everyone or all the patients of corona who are discharged, who are sent home, or they should be called and undergo a nasal endoscopy. So that should be a part of nasal examination, because middle turbinate or in the nose is the first site where the this infection comes. in contact. So any dryness, nasal blockage, or black crust, so even bleeding, brown or black stain may be there. So that could be the first symptom in majority of the patients, and that patient at the time of discharge, COVID patient, they should be made aware that though you are cured of COVID, but there may be some other infection which may be lurking. So he should report to a specialist as soon as these symptoms come in.
So if the patient remains asymptomatic even an 18th day or 19th day, he need not worry. But if there is an early symptom, he should report to the doctor. That's what.
Yeah, that is the thing. If he is asymptomatic, the fever has disappeared. If the fever is still persisting, then you have to, people do get CT scan or to focus, look for the focus where the thing is has gone abnormal.
Can it enter through the ear? Can the spores be lingering on ear wax?
I'm a ENT surgeon. We do get this not mucor in the ear, but other Niger and all those type of fungus, because if the skin is intact and that is a good barrier, and wax as such is a protective. It has a pungent smell, so doesn't let any insect or anything come. And because of wax, it acts as a barrier for the blast sound or abnormal transmission of sound. So wax, why the God has created wax in the ear? It's a protective. It's bitter in taste. It has a pungent smell. So if the person is lying on floor, it doesn't let any insect or anything come in. So wax has a protective thing. But diabetics, this candida or Niger kind of this fungal infection, they are there, especially in the rainy season or discharging year. We do get fungus, but not mucormycosis.
We talked about toxicity of the amphotericin B, nephrotoxicity, cardiotoxicity, neurotoxicity. So one question is, if the patient has impaired kidney function, or what should be the protocol? But we didn't go into details probably, but
say earlier the first drug was plain amphotericin B. So now the liposomal has come, which can be given in a higher dose, and you may have to discontinue. And this amphotericin B is a supportive treatment. The main treatment is debridement. So you get rid of the dead necrotic tissue and then supplement. You have to monitor blood urea or serum creatinine and other side effects, like in the form of electrolytes and this potassium. We do supplement the this potassium chloride in the drip, or magnesium is also supported. So these are monitored. Earlier there used to be more nephrotoxicity because of this plain one. Now with liposomal, if the person is already compromised, we may have to discontinue or switch over to other one. The other this posaconazole, isoniazole, those are very costly drugs. That is the this plain amphotericin is 450 rupees, whereas this liposomal is 8,000. So there is a sea difference in the cost. So one has to balance between the kidney function, and it has to be given for 2 weeks, at least 2 to 6 weeks, and to reduce the usage of this drug, one may do the frequent debridement. We have done 2, 3, because in one sitting you may not be able to get, or you feel that you are removed enough, but if there is a recurrence, so you do a serial debridement and give the drug so as to ensure that the patient's life is taken care.
So probably I can take just one last question. Are the curds and the cheese, with respect to their fermented nature, should be avoided during these days? The curd and the cheese, should we avoid them?
Yeah, yeast is a good this thing. It is a normal commensal and it helps. In fact, those who have diarrhea, curd is advised because that is there in the. But if it is black or those who are immunocompromised, I think it can be avoided. So one should avoid.
Thank you, sir. I think because of the paucity of time, we may move on with the program. Over to Dr. Harneet.
Thank you so much, sir, for being so active, and Professor Ishwar Singh, sir, for patiently answering all queries in a quick manner. So, one query I have updated us with this lethal disease with such a high morbidity, and the later stages of the disease are indeed very scary. But and as you have said, that early diagnosis and prompt debridement is actually the key to success of the treatment. I would like to ask you, sir, for stage 1 and stage 2 disease, which you have already debrided, how much is there a need for the maxillofacial rehabilitation? Because right from minor loosening of teeth that may cause malocclusion to complex dentofacial deformities which are occurring post debridement. So I want to ask your take on this, sir.
Say it depends upon the extent of how much has been the resection. Say post maxillectomy, nowadays the reconstruction is done, but in this you can't do reconstruction immediately. In a case of malignancy, we go for reconstruction. The best thing is to have an obturator. If palate is removed, you can have a palate. Your prostho friend will make a prosthesis, or this nowadays even this dentures type of processes is made which can help in sealing the or separating the nasal cavity from the oral cavity, or subsequently you can have a second stage reconstruction where a temporal fascia can be used to used for reconstruction the floor of the nasal cavity, and that could be the thing. First and foremost is get rid of the disease, because this is quite lethal and fatal. So reconstruction, physical appearance, say if the orbit has been accentuated, patient can go for a prosthesis in the form of like artificial eye, or even if the skin has been removed and it has healed, then a prosthesis with a shape and size same with a magnetic thing can be attached or hooked into the bony anchoring can be done. So malocclusion, though the quality of life has to be taken care, but first is the survival of the patient. So these secondary reconstruction or secondary considerations can be taken later on if you are able to get rid of the fungus. Am I clear? Actually, I couldn't get your
Sure, sir.
question. Your voice was breaking.
Okay. No, sir, you answered my query well. And as maxillofacial rehabilitative personnel, we also need to be charged up for to take up our role for the betterment of the society and to improve the quality of life. But that will be obviously at a later stage. Sanjay Singh, sir, Dean, sir.
I do a lot of head and neck work. I do this debridement and head and neck. So I do call my maxillofacial friends. In fact, two of the postgraduate students from this maxillofacial Maulana Azad College of Dentist and Dental Sciences, they are posted with us in ENT in head and neck, especially. So 2 to 3 months. So they do come to our department, and I also have a close working relation with them. So there is an exchange of this thing, patient also, and they come and assist us, and we do and help them. So one should have a collaboration that improves the quality of work and plus teamwork, and you can learn from each other.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
sir.
Harneet. We have common
Dean, sir.
area of work with ENT. They also work on head and neck area. We also work in head and neck area. We do deal with sinusitis and other infections of the head and neck area, and we do also deal with tumors. So removing the infection or removing the tumors, reconstruction, all these things, we work in hand in glove with ENT people. And this area is an overlap between ENT and maxillofacial surgery.
And even with the plastic people, say rhinoplasty, which is a domain of ENT, yeah, is being snatched away by plastic people. So it's a common territory. Whosoever gets it, it is his patient.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, I have just one question. I'll just take 1 minute. I haven't done much cases of mucormycosis, only one till now, and that to a 65-year-old patient. There was a localized lesion in the maxilla, and we removed that localized lesion, and we got the raw bleeding surfaces. And we never started with amphotericin. We never started. This diagnosis came later on. This is mucor. But that patient healed well with normal antibiotics after that. We never started amphotericin. This happened, but we resected it well. And this is about 7-8 years back.
So you have removed the focus. Once you had done a good debridement, if there is no more this thing, even the load or the necrotic tissue is taken care, the body self-defense mechanism must have cured it. So even in a normal person who inhale the spores, every one of us don't get a fungus. So
Yeah.
our phagocyte system, if there is no predisposing or comorbidity, the patient might have this accidentally, or that may be opportunistic infection. You have removed the, as you say, you have done an extensive excision. So
Yeah.
then it becomes a wound like any other wound. So it will heal in a normal fashion.
Okay. So another
When you are in
another
doubt only then, or when you are not sure, or that is extensive, you can't remove like whole infratemporal fossa or a deep wound. You can't keep on debriding. So there you have to take your amphotericin B as an adjuvant treatment.
Sir, role of zinc. They say that iron is like a fuel to fire. I
Yeah.
want to know. We all are prescribed zinc now. Everybody is
Yes,
taking
that
excessive. What is the
even
role
people
of
are
zinc?
blaming this zinc also. I knew this. I was going to enumerate because every person zinc in one form or the other, and both belong to same group of this thing. Where the in if you go back to your 12th or 10th knowledge, this thing chemistry, zinc and iron and copper, they are in the same group. So even one can suspect this will, though we have used for it for the betterment of the patient, but it may be taken up by the fungus. You never know. So
Thank
it
you,
is
sir.
also being blamed that this zinc supplementation, which we have been doing every right and now, the treatment is crossing antibiotics, this antibiotic or that antibiotic, zinc, stimulation. Huh? So
Yeah.
all this was a treatment which was given by everyone to everyone.
Yeah.
So that zinc may be a factor which may be even taken, being utilized, because in Manley periodic table, zinc, copper, magnesium, all these are in the same table, same group.
True, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was very informative. Very nice talk.
So, nearly at the end of the session, Honorable VC Professor Najma Akhtar Ma'am, Dean, Faculty of Dentistry, Professor Sanjay Singh Sir, faculty members, colleagues, and dear students. With great pleasure, on behalf of the organizing committee, all faculty and students extend a very hearty thanks to our guest speaker, Professor Ishwar Singh, for taking time out from his very busy schedule. He is the esteemed member of the expert committee constituted by Government of NCT of Delhi to manage mucormycosis in Lok Nayak Hospital. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for the three important take-home messages that you've given us in your talk. Black fungus is not a new disease. It is an opportunistic infection in those people who are having compromised immune system. So they have to be more careful, follow appropriate COVID-related behavior, the good control over diabetes and judicious use of steroids in COVID patients is important to prevent black fungus in this pandemic. And the third point, early diagnosis and treatment is the key to prevent its progress to life-threatening disease from black fungus. Our sincere thanks to VC Professor Najma Akhtar ma'am. You've always inspired us for new academic endeavors. This webinar is also the result of your action-oriented approach to keep all of us updated about the state-of-the-art knowledge on such a burning issue that concerns all of us. Our heartfelt thanks to Honorable Registrar, Controller of Examination, Dr. Nazim Hussain Jafri, Sir, and Finance Officer, Dr. Mrs. Renu Batra, Ma'am, for your keen interest and support. My heartfelt gratitude to our beloved Dean Sir, Professor Sanjay Singh, Faculty of Dentistry, and the organizing chairperson of this program. We are very thankful for your continuous encouragement and guidance. Our faculty has organized 15 such webinars with top experts in the country under your able leadership over last 18 months, and many more are in pipeline. I cannot thank enough to Dr. Kazim Naqvi, officiating Director, Center for Information Technology, and his team for their enormous cooperation in organizing this event. Dr. Kazim sir, I highly appreciate you for solving our technical glitches with patience and answering all our queries, however silly may be, with a big smile. They deserve a special round of applause. Thanks to deans and directors of various faculties and centers of Jamia and other dignitaries from joining us today and encouraging us. I am grateful to our motivated and dedicated colleagues, Dr. Haneet Kaur and Dr. Muhammad Salim from Faculty of Dentistry for their untiring efforts and enthusiasm to make it happen very smoothly. My special thanks to all colleagues in Faculty of Dentistry whom I have been calling for guidance and support from time to time. And a big thank you to all faculty members of and colleagues of Jamia and outside Jamia from various institutions. We had about overwhelming response of participation. More than 450 participants had joined us from different states from all over the country. So a big thank you to all of you. Your discussion has given a new meaning to today's webinar and has encouraged us to continue on this journey of knowledge sharing. Pandemic has not yet left us. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and follow COVID appropriate behavior. Thank you all for your kind attention.